Hello, I'd like to welcome Philip Carrigan, Managing Director and owner of Morunda Life Sciences Recruitment based in Tokyo, Japan, who's joining me today to share his insights into everything you need to know about de-risking your people investment when you're expanding into Japan. And Philip has been the owner and operator for over 14 years of his company. Welcome, Philip.
G'day, Catherine. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for joining us. I would love to jump straight into it, Philip, because I'm really pleased that we recently had a success where you helped one of our Australian clients expand in their first people hiring into Japan. So it was a fantastic success. Thank you so much for helping myself, On Q Recruitment, and our client. But what I'd love to do is maybe debunk some of the myths that exist with respect to the Japanese market and what people need to know. So can maybe I step back and ask you, could you share with me what you see as the exciting trends that are shaping the life science market in Japan right now?
Sure. Certainly in pharmaceutical, the most interesting kind of area and the area of biggest demand is rare diseases, orphan drugs, unmet patient needs, and, I would kind of pull oncology into that bracket as well. So whether that be in clinical or commercial, regulatory or pharmacovigilance, the company's pipelines are all about those disease areas. Market entrants coming into Japan. Japan still is a very attractive market for many companies. In AI, Japan's data landscape is really changing with more patient-driven, data that is being utilized and is available, whether it be large language learning models, data analytics, and companies such as Prospection, which is an Aussie company, are doing more and more and partnering with, Japanese companies, local companies and multinational companies from the States or Europe.
Oh, okay. And from a destination perspective, what would you share with my clients that are some of the compelling reasons that they should consider expanding into Japan?
Yeah, both for life science companies and companies servicing life sciences. More and more companies are looking to kind of outsource. And we've partnered with On Q recently in helping a regulatory consulting company, regulatory MPV. So that is an attractive area. The aging population, that's fueling, demand for healthcare solutions for, both pharma and medical devices. And the government's, championing digital health, strong government initiatives are accelerating digital transformation, including AI integration into telemedicine and generally within the healthcare sector. And focused on, as I mentioned before, rare diseases and advanced therapeutics. So they would be the main reasons. A big population, stable government, consistent pricing structures.
Right, which gives companies some security if they want to enter into the Japanese market.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it was all a few years ago, China. There's kind of been I wouldn't say a pivot, but certainly a refocus in the Japan market.
Okay, excellent. Philip, what are the unique characteristics that define the local life sciences landscape in Japan in your terms, from a recruiting perspective?
So for companies entering into Japan, there's a couple of challenges. One, there is, a lack of, brand awareness. The company may be brand new, they may be well known, they may have a market cap of $4 or $5 billion, but still they're unknown, within Japan. Perhaps the clinical folks will have an idea, but the commercial people may not be on their radar sort of at all. But that's not always a bad thing because there's no biases and the company can build their brand. And look, traditionally, the labor market in Japan it's risk adverse, and that's just culturally. And English is not widely spoken compared to some other markets.
So it's reinforcing that to new entrants that bilingual candidates are not common.
Look, they're common within the multinational pharmaceutical companies. I mean, if you're working at a Janssen or an AbbVie or a Pfizer and you're middle-level management or above, you have to speak English. But, there is a limited pool of candidates.
From your perspective, what are some common learning curves new entrants experience when they enter into the Japan market?
I think the candidates that are fairly conservative, that it's difficult for companies to put a job on LinkedIn, for example, and have a flood of applications. Time and time again, companies will come to us and say, well, we tried LinkedIn, but we didn't have any connections. Here are the people that we tried to reach out to. And we'll reach out to exactly the same list. But because we have that relationship, they'll respond to us. So it's more about the relationship as opposed to, who is contacting. Doesn't just have to be Morunda. It could be a number of recruiters, but you've got that relationship with the market.
Yeah, that's so very insightful. So there's an expectation that they want a relationship before they'll continue or engage in a brand new conversation. Okay, that's really insightful. Philip, what are some of the myths or outdated perceptions about Japan that you'd love to clarify?
All right. Myth number one, Japan is really expensive. So this, I don't know, I think it stems back to maybe kind of the 90s or whatever, but Japan has had deflation for 40 years, 30 years.
Right.
So certainly the rest of the world is caught up and, markets, markets like Singapore and other markets are probably more expensive than Japan now. The second myth is that recruiting in Japan is incredibly difficult. It's impossible. And it's not. And in Morunda, we make it look easy because we've got those, relationships. It's slower than other markets. Candidates are risk averse. There are nuances, but, we've helped, so many companies come into the market. It's, the list of successes is long.
Oh, excellent. So that's fantastic news for our clientele. Yes, it's not as difficult as people have a perception. And I think I would be one of those people that would have thought Japan is an expensive market. So in fact, talent acquisition, if I hear you correctly, is competitive and cost effective for international companies when they're looking at countries, not to make an assumption about the cost of doing business and hiring talent in Japan. Excellent.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Philip, what pleasantly surprises new employers, when they begin operating in the Japanese market?
Yeah, great question. The candidates they're loyal. They're very, very professional. They've got a very hard and dedicated work ethic. They do what they say and they say what they'll do. Once they have, signed or they're on board, then they're good to go. While kind of cultural nuances do exist, the companies can, they're gaining access to a very knowledgeable, hardworking, very well educated workforce with a strong work ethic.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. If I was looking at entering into the Japanese market, I'm a new biotech or international pharmaceutical company, and I want to introduce my pipeline or my company brand. And how do I go about that and ensuring that the vision that we want is shared in the local market?
Yeah, we have really strong expertise in this area, and we've done a few different things. But I would suggest to any company coming into Japan is, partner with the right people, whether it be a recruiting company or a consulting company. So you've got people on the ground in Japan with, long experience that, they know candidates that are in the market and not just kind of on the market.
Yes.
And, look for ways, working with your partners with sort of creative and direct storytelling. Some of the things that we've done is we've had podcasts with our clients or conversations like this. I've been able to publish articles and have them, published in Pharma Japan, which is a local sort of trade journal. We've held, sort of company events where we've invited, leaders across the board, salary information. I know you've done a lot of work in that sort of area, Catherine, but it's about really listening to your clients and what do they need? What don't they understand? And I had a call with a client this morning. Again, she was in Melbourne and she was like, oh, what about the holidays or what about the overtime or what about, permanent employees versus contract employees? So there's a lot of questions that sometimes if you're in a different country, you can assume, oh yeah, of course the client would know that. Of course it's going to be different than America. But, sometimes the client will assume that it's going to be the same way in their country. And of course, yeah, but it's about, listening. And I think that's what we do really well. And we, provide that information in terms of, raw data, examples, case studies and so forth. So they can make an informed decision rather than just flying by the seat of their pants.
That's excellent. And I really liked, Philip, that you're able to help clients, new life science companies coming into Japan with a very strategy to help raise their brand, because you did mention earlier brand recognition and loyalty is very important, and having a relationship. So it goes along the way of educating the candidate market about this new entrant. So those solutions are excellent. I think that's fantastic. Philip, what recruitment dynamics, in your opinion, should new employers to Japan be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is that it's going to take a little longer in Japan. It just things are just a little bit more, slowly. So perhaps in some markets you might be able to get the offer in 4 to 6 weeks. It might take 8 to 10 weeks in Japan. I always tell clients start early. Hope for the best, expect for the worst, but start early because everyone's going to. Once they decide, they want that person to start tomorrow. But, you need to give yourself as much time as possible once that decision has been made at headquarters or you have that, you have the headcount. And LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. In Japan, though, although there are some candidates on LinkedIn, when you look at the percentages, it's incredibly low compared to other markets. And again, you're going to need that, relationship with the candidate. That's not to say that you shouldn't advertise on LinkedIn and kind of get your message out there. But our experience, the return on investment is modest at best. You want to be emphasizing on passive candidates. And I think I mentioned before, it's all about who's in the market, not just on the market. Those people that are on the market are normally on for a reason, and the clients want to hire the person who's basically 80% happy, doing a fantastic job, but they may be open to a fantastic opportunity if one was to come along and to be presented correctly.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And I think your comment about LinkedIn, how it differs to Australia, disloyalty, I think you mentioned earlier about being actively on the market in Japan, that can be seen as disloyal to your employer. So don't expect candidates to have open to work opportunities on their LinkedIn profiles in Japan, where in Australia that would be not unusual. Okay. And
Right.
the emphasis you mentioned on the relationship, that is really true. If companies partner with you, if they're looking like our current client did recently to expand into Japan, their first employee, how can Miranda and your team help?
Yeah, great question. And look, we're really lucky to be able to be partnering with On Q and through InRails. And InRails is a global network of recruiting companies in Europe, the Americas, and in Asia. So Morunda is able to provide unparalleled access to top-tier global talent, not just in Japan, but in the United States, APAC, in Europe, and North and South America. This means that you get a global talent pool, but you have the local knowledge in Japan and those relationships that we talked about earlier. Secondly, decades long of local insights. And we've seen companies make great success, and we've seen companies make great blunders as well, and be able to share those insights with our clients. And we're proven market entrance specialists. We've got a long list of companies that we've been able to help come into Japan successfully. In particular, placing their general manager, head of, regulatory, head of safety, head of medical, and then to be able to partner through with them as they commercialize their product.
So you're really de-risking the employment of investment of people, and you're really helping new entrants into the Japanese market because you've got that expertise. I think I'd also like to conclude that it's been really insightful for me. You've definitely changed my mindset around some of the myths I had about the Japanese market in terms of time to hire. It is long, slightly longer than Australia, but not excessively long. I think salaries, that's really a huge factor for our local and our global life science companies. So the fact that the Japanese market is competitive, but I think also what you've reinforced from a cultural perspective is the prior relationships are so important, and not for employers and companies to think they can put an ad on LinkedIn and going to get a response only from maybe unemployed. So really that prior relationship is absolutely key and critical. And that's something that you've helped countless companies do.
Thanks, Catherine.
And Philip, have I missed anything? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we've got it all. Thank you.
And thank you
Appreciate
again. And to my Australian clientele, if you're considering expanding or you'd like an introduction to Philip, please reach out. I'd be more than happy to introduce you if you're looking at expanding into the Japanese market. Thank you.